Recording in progress. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, hopefully you all can see that. All right, let's get this party started. My name is Chris Vogel. I'm the president of the Evolutionary Evaluation Association. This is our 27th or 28th consecutive journal club. And today we're talking about an article from the newest New Directions in Evaluation. It's kind of rough to even call it a new article because this whole journal or this whole volume is dedicated to this idea of relational systems evaluation. So I picked one that I thought was best suited for this forum, and that's the Introduction to Relational Systems in Evaluation by Archibald, Hargraves, Buckley, Hebbard, Linver, and Trochim. If I'm butchering a few of those, I bet. But just so you're aware, if you have, well, I'll get into that at the end, I guess, because the article does a really good line of, oh, if you have more questions about this aspect of it, see this article in this journal. This one, see this article. So I'll just briefly mention what those are later. So what is relational system evaluation? It's a framework for program planning and evaluation that is theoretically grounded, empirically tested, and focused on building evaluation capacity. Okay, I'm not sure that tells us much from the other theories or the other evaluation systems, evaluation plans, frameworks, guidelines that are already out there. But we do see the difference once we start getting into it. RSE is grounded in I didn't remove the grounded from the first one. It's grounded in formal research and theory from developmental systems theory. It pulls in quite a bit from evolutionary theory, specifically here talking about the evolution of programs, how they change over time. Evolutionary epistemology, how one comes to understand the way things change, systems theory, and then experience-based learning and testing. So these are all the fundamental approaches which the authors used to really come about this particular evaluation approach. Well, once again, that doesn't tell us much about the approach itself, but they did include this fancy graphic that I like, and it's really the rest of the presentation. So it divides up the different components of relational systems evaluation into 4 different buckets, brackets, the application of it, what different approaches do we use to actually make sure this happens? What are the embedded practices that it focuses on? Additionally, what approaches does the relational systems evaluation use? And then, of course, the foundations, right? What are those theoretical underpinnings which give this credibility? So systems evaluation protocol. So this is a step-by-step guide for program evaluation covering the 3 phases of evaluation planning, implementation, and utilization. So they're taking this very systematic approach to where special consideration is given in all 3 of these domains to the grander scheme of the evaluation protocol being laid out here. Capacity building facilitation, probably not a unique term for all of you, but I figured I can't give definition of all of these and not leave this one out. So this is facilitating the capacity of organizations to test ideas, identify what works and doesn't work to evaluate, and use that knowledge to improve strategies, advocate for change, and promote equity and social justice. So those are the applications that we're talking about, building that evaluation capacity, and then this methodological assessment of a program system, whatever it is that you're looking at. The embedded practices. So from reading the article, you can probably tell that it's very focused on this idea of the partnership model, where the authors advocate strongly for establishing productive and meaningful collaborative partnerships. Evaluation program professionals must rely on relational principles, including flexibility, responsiveness, open communication, and mutual benefit. So I find that this is a fairly common, if not always included. I'm going to say it's always included in any evaluation approach. But here, they're really mixing it up well by specifically calling out this idea of evaluative thinking, which I don't know how new of a concept it is, so much as in popularity. No, well, that's at least been around a few years. So it's when I first started hearing about it. But anyway, so it's the critical thinking applied in the context of evaluation, motivated by an attitude of inquisitiveness and a belief in the value of evidence that involves identifying assumptions, posing thoughtful questions, pursuing. I haven't been looking at my notes. Pursuing deeper understanding through reflection and perspective taking, and informing decisions in preparation for action. So if you're interested in this topic, I think Dr. Tom Archibald has written quite a bit about this, even gives a workshop at AEA and CES. And it's good. The idea itself makes sense, right? Taking really from a critical thinking framework and applying evaluative ideas to it, right? The idea of and embracing this questioning. And I like that word in the second line, the inquisitiveness. I always felt that that's what evaluative thinking was, where critical thinking really is the dissection of an idea. Inquisitiveness is the interest in learning about the idea more. Wrong one. There we go. Systems thinking. Just because I feel like the term is thrown around a lot, we decided to call out this one: valuing and questioning evidence, engaging in rich dialogue with colleagues about why we might be seeing what we are seeing in our data, and figuring out where in the system we may look for elements of the story we are trying to construct from an evaluation of a program. I really liked, was it the article or maybe my additional reading up of this? Systems thinking, I think, is really easily understood in the two questions. Instead of just asking what works, ask what works for whom and under what conditions, right? All those different elements that may contribute to either the success of the program or its outcomes, all that jazz. Now we're getting to evolutionary evaluation. This was a new topic for me. But yeah, evolutionary evaluation considers the complex factors inherent in the larger systems within which a program is embedded, just as we characterize human development into broad phases, infancy, childhood, adolescence, early adulthood. We can similarly discuss the development of programs in terms of broad phases, and they identify the broad phases in the article. The phase 1 is initiation, phase 2 is development, phase 3 is stability, and phase 4 is dissemination. So the acknowledgement that every program, like any organism, has a life cycle and proceeds through these different phases. You know, they're created, they're born, and then they go through cycles of rapid change and growth, and hopefully they may stabilize over time and become more settled, and then hopefully the dissemination of them widely. I didn't put the last one in here, so I'll just go back up. From my understanding of the article, what they're advocating for with this relational systems evaluation is an explicit understanding of the utility of combining all these different aspects of what I would say other approaches to evaluation, except evolutionary evaluation. Like I said, I hadn't heard that before, but at least the other 5 are fairly common. Some are more common in other approaches than others. But here, it's my understanding that they're really trying to make the case for why all of these combined can really get some great evaluative evaluation results. Yeah, and I'll leave that there. So what I was going to rant about, what I was going to say was that sorry, I'm looking at this. That the other ones, the other articles in this volume, the Buckley et al. One provides more detail on the partnership approach, the benefit of open communication and mutual benefit. That's the Buckley and the Urban article. Anyway, so I don't want to go through all the articles in this volume, but just to really harp on the idea that this article was just to introduce you to the concept of relational systems evaluation, And then the other articles dive into really these components. There's also an article dedicated to the funders, the people that ran the program at least, their interpretation of being a part of this. So that was the one that I actually was really looking forward to reading, but I just did not get around to it. So I thought that was interesting. So we'll see if you're like me and want to hop in and read the rest of the volume, then I think we'll see what the case is to be made for how effective this approach is. But I mean, on its face, it seems like it has all of those, at least what has a logical consistency to it, that these would all be effective approaches to combine. With that being said, I was going to throw this discussion question out here. So there are a lot of different components to this, and I think you already picked up on some of mine, that I do like the idea of combining all of these. A lot of the components aren't new to many evaluators. We've seen them before. But I was curious what folks thought would be a limitation of this approach or similar approaches even. And if you don't have any, that's fine too. Man.
I'll speak. I'm Cassandra. I work for the Illinois Asthma Program, and actually Maddie's on my team, so I'm not going to speak for her, but she can chime in about our experiences so far. We are new to evaluation, but I will say with this discussion question, possible limitations that I've seen when working and creating SEPs and individual evaluation plans with some of our stakeholders is not necessarily kind of building the foundation for evaluative thinking, but how do you continue to have those stakeholders keep that evaluative thinking after maybe said individual IEP is done, and then they might be invited to another IEP? And how do they take that concept on their organizational level and continue that for improvement without having evaluator encouragement? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. How do you keep that evaluative thinking fire alive in them, not only across a single project, right, but across multiple projects? And then hopefully, how does that flame get lit to go through an organization, if I'm understanding you correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. No, good point. And one of the authors even pointed this out, right? In one of their explicit limitations of this approach, the demands can be difficult to staff who have limited time for engaging in evaluation, or where there is insufficient support for and commitment to evaluation at higher levels of the organizational system. Very true. I often rant about, and I'm from the work at the Centers for Disease Control, but even before then, working in local nonprofits, CBOs, local health departments, all that jazz. I would throw around the idea of evaluation appreciation is where I had to start with a lot of organizations, that a lot of them didn't see it much different than crunching numbers or something to that effect. And then it could often take years to build a successful level of evaluation appreciation to where that enthusiasm for evaluation can be maintained. So absolutely, it's one of the banes of our existence as evaluators. I'll throw another one out there that the authors talked about, that this process, and I would say a lot of processes where there is a high level of partner collaboration, participation. I found this in all my work, that it's just intensive and lengthy process, right? You need a lot of the people's time, and it can take a significant amount of time. So here I'm thinking of, there's that continuum that exists of participatory evaluation approaches, right? Whether or not it's participatory evaluation or collaborative evaluation or empowerment evaluation, at each level, it gets more intensive and there's more time commitment to it. And with this one, I can definitely see that, because I think it's inherent in a lot of those. I'm not saying it's a good thing or bad thing. I'm just saying that sometimes we don't have that time or money or or just the ability to include all of those folks we want to include in this. And another one I'll throw out there that I took to heart from the article was that when the programs are really prescribed, and there's really little room for pursuing evaluation needs or making changes or adapting to them. The authors make the case that really this approach takes a ground-up decision-making approach, and it's inherent to it. So it might be out of place where, I don't know, it's a national program and you are perhaps in one state or one county and have very limited ability to change things with it. So that's rough. Any other limitations? I'm not feeling well. I grabbed the wrong water.
So kind of, I guess, piggybacking on what you were just saying is like, if it's really prescriptive and maybe you have multiple stakeholders or multiple aspects going into the overall program, is acknowledging the total evolution of the program itself. Mm-hmm. And then how does the evaluation reflect that? So that constant need to be dynamic, but also to adjust your strategic plan and your individual plans, pick up new projects, reassess, especially when stakeholders and internal and external evaluators are so crunched for time and resources. I could see that as being a limitation, especially when things are moving so much. You've got funds coming in different places or not enough funds. But overall, when I read this article, I did think that combining all of these aspects would be totally feasible through obviously practice. And then I do think it'd be effective. I just don't know, comparatively speaking, how big these limitations that we're talking about are in regards to like another evaluation process. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, there was something that crossed my mind reading this, and specifically limitations. One that this does have a number of elements from the CDC evaluation framework, but I would also say that all of these limitations can apply to something like the CDC's evaluation framework, and it's just a matter of how much you want to go down a rabbit hole of each of the components. So talking about engaging stakeholders is intensive and a lengthy process. Like I said, that exists in any of them that you're going to use a participatory approach with. Now, I could see this one being more so, especially as you're getting into the evolutionary evaluation. And actually, if you're going in depth on like systems thinking or even trying to promote evaluative thinking, I mean, those are all components that add time to it. But that could also be considered just getting buy-in to ensure use if I'm trying to translate this into a different evaluation framework. So the last step of the CDC's framework. And I'm not sure. And I guess I'm using that as my frame of reference because it's the only one that comes to the top of my head. But one difference I would point out between the two frameworks then is that the CDC framework can be applied when it's highly prescriptive. I mean, just by the nature of our work, we don't develop the programs, and there's people more brilliant than us that created them, so we don't have the ability to change them, but we do provide recommendations and all that jazz. So if it is a more dynamic evaluation or a dynamic program or something more appropriate like a developmental approach could be used, I'm sure the developmental evaluation could be applied in here somewhere, but it just becomes much easier if the program can actually be changed. Absolutely. And one other thing I was thinking of when you talked about it, it happened a few times when I was working with community-based organizations where a better understanding how the program has changed over time to ensure we don't repeat mistakes that in our recommendations that have been tried in the past or something like that. It becomes really complicated when there's high turnover, and that's what I ran into in a couple of organizations and even a few nonprofits with their fairly stellar retention rate for staff, but that's neither here nor there. That yeah, it's really hard to get an idea of how the program has changed when your people have been there a year or two and it's been a 5-year program. We would rely on like the historical documents if they exist somewhere. So that also makes it kind of complicated. Okay, I think that's all I had. I'm trying to think. Any questions, thoughts about the article, about evaluation? Anything?
No, I just want to thank you for being here today when you're not feeling well and introducing us to RSE. I haven't heard about this as a whole. I mean, I agree with you that it is like I don't want to say it's like a fad term right now, but evaluative thinking has been coming up a lot in the articles that I've been reading, and with my MPH really heavily relying on systems thinking approach. So that was kind of neat to see how you can combine all of these things into evaluation and make hopefully effective evaluations and useful ones.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we'll see the longevity of the relational systems. I'm excited to read the rest of the volume because it seems to go more in depth with it. And evaluative thinking, yeah, it's had a little bit of an interesting lifespan, and that's what I was fumbling around with my words because yeah, I think I'm much like you, where I was introduced to it a few years ago, but I actually don't know if it existed before then. So I'll try not to speak about stuff I don't know about. But yeah, it is definitely a buzzword, and I think at the very least it does a good job of explaining what it is we're trying to build. I'm putting on my independent consultant hat here, that I'm trying to build in an organization before we leave. Only because that's what I usually ran into. I'd go into a place and that they would be required to do an evaluation because of some grant money they got, but they didn't understand evaluation or even the components of it. And I would like to build evaluation appreciation, but the step before that was always that evaluative thinking piece to help them facilitate that empowerment where they want to ask questions about their program and they're comfortable doing that. And yeah, it's anyway, I'm on a rant now.
No, I agree with that, and that definitely ties into that rapport building that you were talking about. That's evaluative thinking, however you term it, when you're speaking to stakeholders that are new to evaluation, especially, is just kind of getting the ball rolling, building that rapport, them being comfortable with you and not and breaking down those barriers. Like, we're not here to judge you, we're here to, you know, work together and find the value and the gaps, you know. So I definitely think that is foundational to any type of stakeholder engagement.
And I was just thinking about that the other day, how sometimes I still run up against the fact of going into a new organization and they think we're efficiency experts and we're looking to find, like we're people from that movie Office Space, where we're going to go around and interview people about ask them what they do all day. And yeah, so just breaking that's a good first step. But
now I have to go watch Office Space. I don't know if Maddie's ever seen Office Space, but I'll connect her with it soon so she can see what you're talking about.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. Sorry.
Well, it's very quick, but the one part I'm thinking of, you have the two efficiency experts sitting across the table and they interview people all day with the classic line, "What would you say you do here?" And then they rate people and fire them based. Anyway, it's good times. So we are not that, and I'm proud to not be that. But okay, gang. And unless there's any other thoughts, I'll let you get back to your day. Thank you for joining me. We do this, you know, same bad time, same bad place every month. Apparently, whether I'm sick or not. So
we'll see you next month. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much. Sorry, I didn't have much to add just because, again, me and Cassandra are on the same team and I'm new to evaluation myself. So, but thank you for having us.
No problem. Hey, as long as you can take away one thing, that's always what I hope for. So, all right. Have a good one. Enjoy the rest of your day.
I feel better.
Thank you. Bye.